The mighty first-person shooter MMO known as Destiny has been out for a little over 6 years. I've been playing the series since Destiny 1 was released up to its last expansion and played Destiny 2 up to the Forsaken DLC. I have quite a bit of history with this game, and I decided to dive back into it since the Beyond Light DLC came out with another campaign and new elements being thrown into the mix. So this inspired me to do something a little different for this video. I wanted to get a fresh perspective. What is it like getting into this game for the first time after it's been out for so many years? And how user-friendly is it? I have started all the way from scratch and downloaded all of the DLC for Destiny 2, so that way I can experience what this game has to offer for newcomers. I'm quite aware that a lot of people play this game and make love to the lore all day and all night. However, I do not play the game for that, so I will not be diving into that whole mess of a story. I will only provide what I care and know about, then you are on your own from there. If you want to get a giant dose of lore, watch another YouTuber's lore video or something. This video is going to be focusing mainly on the gameplay and the combat, as well as how one progresses through the game. I want to basically let people know whether or not it is a good idea to get into this game in the current state that it is in. So, without further delay, let's get resurrected, kill some aliens, and channel our inner light. Upon starting the game, you can tell that Destiny has been around for some time, as it introduces you, the player, as a new guardian. It is quick to let you know that you are kind of late to the party, but that isn't a bad thing per se. You start off by helping out a new NPC called Shah Han. His main purpose is to show you the ropes and give you a taste of the kind of story that you're going to be getting yourself into. You are basically a resurrected human, Exo, or Awoken, who was called to protect humanity in their time of need. There's a story of many predictable twists and turns. You are the hero of the day to resolve any kind of alien conflict that involves the annihilation of the human race. Once you get to the tower, you are introduced to the Vanguard, and the feeling of being late is even further enforced. I still miss my main man, Cade 6, especially back in the day when he was voiced by Nathan Fillion. Those were some awesome days. I remember the original campaign for Destiny 2 and how the game introduced you to their mechanics back then. I have to say, that was pretty awesome. This introduction felt like my hand was being held, really. I understand why Bungie did it, but I felt that something as grand as the introduction to the Red War was just so much more awesome. I really did enjoy that campaign, and the feeling of being at war in this game felt exhilarating. This also brings me to another aspect that will bring up some question marks for newer and older players. The old campaigns from the Red War to the Warmind DLC are gone for the time being. There is no way to access them, so if you are picking up the game for the first time, do not expect to know the entirety of the story right away. You need to either read up or watch some stuff on YouTube. The main reason for this was because the developers didn't want to be compiling so much data at once. The file size was just simply too big. I remember when the game went free to play. Me and my girlfriend could play the original content together without too much of a problem. But if you want to play the Shadowkeep or Forsaken campaigns, you needed to purchase them, and you still do. This causes potentially a couple of issues, but nothing that would really piss anyone off. The Warmind and Osiris content has been out for literal years, and it wasn't exactly the best received either. It was the Forsaken DLC that Destiny 2 started to truly shine again, and was received relatively well by the community. I personally still regard it as the best campaign to this date. But I digress. Any player that is thrown into the game is quickly introduced to the main characters as well as how to use certain weapons. You're given exotic quests almost immediately, and you're also given the option to do the Forsaken and Shadowkeep campaigns, provided that you have purchased them or have the Game Pass for Xbox. You can also explore areas such as the Moon and Europa without purchasing the campaigns, and complete some quests as well. So, despite my gripes, you are given plenty to do, and any new player should be able to dive right into the starting content. So overall, getting to grips with the game shouldn't be any problem for anyone as long as you are paying attention to your prompts and your quests. If there's one thing in Destiny that I have always enjoyed, it's the gameplay. The title of this section basically says it all. You will mostly be seeing bullets, explosions, and powers being thrown around like it's the 4th of July in space. The classes that you are able to select at the start of the game are the Hunter, the Warlock, and the Titan. All three have their own unique playstyles and have a unique starting subclass for their supers and abilities. You can earn other subclasses as you play the game. Each class can be described briefly as such. The Titan is your typical tough space marine. They punch enemies for their melee and start off with their shocking Striker class, whose super I greatly appreciate for literally electrocuting someone to death while pounding on the ground or kneeing them in the face. They are, however, generally slower moving than the other classes, but can tank hits that others cannot. A great crowd pleaser, but cannot avoid damage all that well. The Hunter is your fast and tricky sharpshooter. They are generally faster than the other classes and stick with dealing a lot of damage within a short amount of time. They also start off with the Golden Gun super that incinerates most foes in one shot. Hunters may not be able to take as much damage as a Titan or recover as fast as a Warlock, but their bonuses for critical damage and speed make them more than formidable in a fight. The Warlock is your well-rounded spell user. They like to perform AoE type damage. Warlocks do their best to keep themselves and others healed up along with debuffing enemies. The super they start off with is the Void Walker, which can basically Kamehameha dudes out of existence. They may not be able to dish out as much damage as a Hunter or be as durable as a Titan, but their support abilities and AoE attacks can mean the difference between life and death. Each class can use any kind of gun that they find and can attain other subclasses to widen their abilities. Only thing here is that you cannot go around mixing and matching with the subclasses. You have to stick with one subclass and one of the 3 variations that come with them. Players can switch the subclasses and variations around at any time, fortunately, so this allows others to experiment as much as they want. I personally have always gone with the Striker Code of the Juggernaut and the Sunbreaker Siegebreaker variants. Both provide healing abilities and allow me to support my team if things get a bit dicey. But don't be taking my word for it. You have to figure out for yourself what really works for you. The shooting in this game does feel good, and the armor system is easy to pick up as well. The only thing that can get to people is needing to switch your equipment around in order to keep leveling up. Higher gear score equals higher damage output and lower damage intake. So this is actually really important. There will be many occasions where you will be using a variant of a gun and then realize that you have to switch to a new one just because it has a higher gear level and you need to keep increasing in power. This, in my opinion, is a good thing and a bad thing. The good part about this is that it does make you try out different variants and types of weapons and armor. Being more versatile is never really a bad thing, and you never know what kind of person may come in handy for certain encounters. I found myself actually really enjoying just using a pistol or a hand cannon because the stats were just perfect on them. It made me want to keep them. Armor, I had a similar experience. There are ways to keep this said gear, which is by infusing them with higher level versions of gear, but this only applies to legendary gear and exotic equipment, and if they happen to be in the same class of the said gear. The bad part about this is basically the opposite of what I just said. Needing to switch around your equipment can be freaking terrible, especially if you prefer a certain type of gun or really like the bonus stats on a certain piece of armor. There was actually a time where I had 2 rare sniper rifles because I needed the higher level and the terrible RNG just needed to give me those guns. Yes, infusing is still available, but that is if you haven't used all of the upgrade modules in your inventory and or have the currency to purchase more, which is another slog altogether. Not to mention the armor for blue/rare equipment just doesn't look that good at all. It looks bulby and glossy most of the time. Fortunately, legendary equipment doesn't pull that stunt on you, at least not on Titans. It really isn't until you hit that soft cap that you can start making your perfect build. But even then, these kinds of things can happen to you. So in this case, it is a mixed bag on what you are willing to tolerate and how you take it. So, piece of advice. If it is blue, it is due. Get rid of it or infuse it into something better if you get the chance. Rare/blue equipment will be your bread and butter until you hit the soft cap, which is around power level 1200. And then you can start sticking with legendary and exotic equipment as you continue your playthrough. Weapons are divided up into 3 categories. You have kinetic, energy, and power. Kinetic weapons are generally pretty good against foes without shields. Energy weapons are effective against shields that can cause them to implode if you're shooting the said shielded enemy with a matching element. Power weapons are your all-around kill-everything weapons. They range from explosive weaponry such as rocket launchers and grenade launchers. Some come in the form of non-explosives such as swords and LMGs. These weapons are meant to be used very sparingly, and only for the big boys and or when you're surrounded by multiple enemies and the odds are completely against you. Oh, and they have energy attunement as well, just like energy type weapons. You can carry all 3 weapon types at once, and they all have their uses. Take note, though, the legendary type weapons can have their attunements changed/upgraded, provided that you have the materials to do so. The last thing that I would like to talk about in this section are the exotic armor and weapons in the game. These are the real game changers in combat. These things range from giving bonuses in certain situations or giving you passive bonuses. For example, I have a pulse rifle that makes people explode into void grenades upon getting killed by critical hits and does increased damage with every second bullet shot. I just can't put the thing down. I had an SMG that turned me into a friggin' lightning conductor. Anytime I was shot by shock-based attacks, I would get shielded from said attacks, rejuvenate my ammo, and have chain lightning for all my bullets. I was even able to get a set of gauntlets that made my fists hit like a freight train, increased lunge range/speed, and increased my damage output of melee attacks whenever I was surrounded by more than one enemy. To say the least, weapons/pieces of armor are greatly beneficial and give you major bonuses on your stats. The drawback on this, though, is that you can only have one exotic weapon and one piece of exotic armor equipped at a time. I understand why the developers did this. It was so that way no one would be terribly overpowered. I can only imagine how powerful people would be if they didn't have those limits and used them in PvP. Strikes in PvE would be a joke as well. Now, a lot of this stuff has been in place for some time, but some have changed. For example, shotguns actually used to be a power weapon. Yeah, that didn't sit too well with me, especially considering that finding ammo for power weapons is generally scarce. The ammo system has been revamped too, to where specialized weapons such as shotguns and sniper rifles now require secondary ammo pickups, while normal weapons such as assault rifles and pistols are on the primary pickups. This makes ammo management almost seamless. It makes things very much user-friendly. The only problem with this, like I have said before, are those situations when you have secondary ammo-type weapons in both slots for your main weapons. Ammo becomes very scarce when that happens, and trust me, going fisticuffs all the time is ill-advised. I can speak from experience. Armor received a change as well. Bungie affectionately refers to it as Armor 2.0. You can upgrade your armor, change its attunement, and apply mods that make it even more useful. There is also an artifact system that helps you level up and choose what kind of weapon specialty mods you want to have available to you. It's pretty nifty. It doesn't cost too many resources, and pretty self-explanatory once you dig into it. Another change that is in place is the Beyond Light campaign, which introduces darkness-type subclasses. I'm not going to dive into spoiler territory since a lot of people would like to go into this themselves and experience it, but my main opinion on this was that it was okay. I didn't feel that it was as good as the Forsaken campaign, and stakes definitely didn't feel that they were really there. You pretty much know that you are going to prevail, and the darkness/stasis powers were cool to experience, but I switched back to my light powers almost immediately after experimenting a bit. Don't get me wrong, these powers are cool to get, and the weapons are too, but I feel as if more could have been done with the enemies, and more risks could have been taken. I just felt that they played it too safe when it comes to the story and how the powers are achieved. To those that did enjoy the story and are still enjoying it, I'm happy for you. It just wasn't that impressive to me. It's not at all bad, it just wasn't up to par on what Bungie has been able to pull off before. The game is very belligerent in having you visit Europa as soon as possible. So until you go there and see the intro to Beyond Light, the game will not stop pestering you. Other worlds that you are able to explore are the Moon, the Tinkled Shore, Nessus, and Dreaming City. All but one of these places have their own campaigns and are a blast to go through. I felt that Bungie really did accomplish something great with those campaigns, and there were many parts that actually widened my eyes a bit due to the dark undertones that were thrown in. Beyond Light was just too obvious. The last thing that I believe should be touched on is the co-op/multiplayer. Nothing has really been changed. This is one of those situations where if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Destiny 2 has always had a robust drop-in and drop-out co-op system, and their multiplayer has never been problematic for me. My connection is a piece of crud too, and I was still having a good time. That should tell you something. To put this in the simplest way, I love Destiny. I love what Bungie has built here. It's simply amazing what has been accomplished. When they said that this game was going to go on for years, they meant it. Granted, it is a bit expensive, but what do you expect from an MMO of this caliber? Yes, there are games like Destiny out there, but none of them measure up to how fun and crazy the combat can get, and how seamless it is to have fun and go crazy with other people. After not playing it for a good couple of years, I find myself getting sucked right back in. There are so many avenues that you can take. You can stick with mainly PvE content, or you can go PvP and challenge yourself. Heck, you can stick with just the PvP content as well and still progress. You don't have to go mainly PvE. The game lets you choose what kind of adventure you want to have on a daily and weekly basis. On top of that, the visuals are just spectacular to look at. I can't tell you how many times I went to lost sectors, which is blown away by the environments and the music that was accompanied by it. I would recommend Destiny to anyone who is looking for something new, fun, and wants to have fun with friends in a generally good community, especially if you love first-person shooters like I do. You can pick the game up for free and just do the free content, and you can pick up the campaign/expansions for heavily discounted prices during sales. If you have the Game Pass upon this video being uploaded and it is still available, I would highly recommend downloading this and playing it for yourself. It is a must-play if it is available to you.